this is Rex from Rex Recites. For this video, I'm departing a little bit from the usual format. Instead of quoting poetry, I'm going to recite a short story by Edgar Allan Poe, possibly his most famous one. It's a little exercise, a little excursion into the world of madness, or at least near madness. The name of it is The Telltale Heart, and it goes like this. True, I am nervous, very, very nervous. I have been and am. But why will you say I am mad? The disease has sharpened my senses, not destroyed or dulled them. Especially is my sense of hearing acute. I hear all things in heaven. I hear all things in earth. Why, I even hear many things in hell. How then am I mad? Listen and see how carefully I tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none, passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never done me wrong. He had never given me criticism. Of his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, this was it. For one of his eyes was like that of a vulture, a pale blue with a hideous veil over it. And every time it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so it was that by degrees, very, very gradually, I determined to kill the old man and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You think me mad, but madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen with what foresight, with what caution, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than I was in the week before I killed him. And this is the way I proceeded. Every night, just before midnight, I lifted the latch of his door, oh so slowly, and when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I thrust in a dark lantern, all closed, so that no light shone out. And then I thrust my head in. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cleverly, how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my head far enough into the room so that I could see the old man as he slept. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well within the room, I undid the lantern cautiously, oh so cautiously, until at length a single ray fell out and shot out and fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights. But I found the eye always closed. And so it was impossible for me to do the deed, for it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into his room, speaking in a courageous tone, calling him by name, and asking him how he had spent the night. So, you see, it would have been a very profound old man to suspect that every night, just at midnight, I looked in upon him as he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was especially cautious. A watch's minute hand moved faster than did mine. Never before had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feeling of triumph. To think that here I was opening his door little by little, and he not even suspecting of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved suddenly upon his bed as if startled. Now you may think I drew back, but oh no, because his room was pitch black, for the shutters were closed on account of robbers, and I knew that he could not see the opening of the door. I put my head in and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. I scarcely breathed. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle. And in the meantime, I did not hear him lie back down. He was sitting up in bed listening, just as I have done night after night, listening to the death watches in the wall. Presently, I heard a slight groan. It was a groan of mortal terror. It was not a groan of grief or pain, but of the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew that sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when the whole world is asleep, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well, and I pitied the old man, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise disturbed him in his bed. His fears had ever since been growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself such things as, "It is only the wind in the chimney," or "It is merely a mouse crossing the floor," or "It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these dispositions, but could not. And all in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped him as victim. And it was the mournful influence of this unperceived shadow that made the old man feel, although he neither saw nor heard, the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, I resolved to open a very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at last a single dim ray shot out from the crevice and fell full upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness. It was a pale blue with a hideous veil over it. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct precisely upon the damned spot. And now, have I not told you that what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the senses? Now I say there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury, as the beating of a drum stimulates a soldier to courage. But even yet I refrained and stood still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless and tried to maintain its ray upon the eye. Meanwhile, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew louder and louder. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder and louder every moment. And now, at the dead hour of night, amid the dreadful silence of this old house, such a noise as this excited me to an uncontrollable terror. Yet, for some minutes longer, I refrained and stood still. But the sound grew louder and louder. I thought the heart must burst. And now, a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. And so the old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw up the lantern and leapt into the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I had dragged him to the floor and placed the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes the heart beat on with a muffled sound. But this did not vex me, for I knew it could not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand on his heart and held it there for many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. Now, if you still think me mad, you would think so no longer when I describe to you the wise precautions I took for concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked busily, but in silence. First, I dismembered the body. I cut off the head, the arms, and the legs. I then took up 3 floors from the flooring of the chamber and thrust all between the timbers. I then replaced the boards so carefully, so cunningly, that no human eye would have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, No blood spot whatever. I had been too wary for that. A tub had caught all, ha ha ha. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, but still as dark as midnight. As the bell tolled the hour, there came a knocking from the street door below. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I to fear? There entered 3 men who announced themselves with perfect suavity as members of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police station, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took them over the whole house and bade them search and search well. At length, I led them to his room and showed him his treasures secure and undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into this very room and desired the officers that they rest from their labors. And in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, I placed my own chair upon the very spot below which the corpse of the old man remained. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was completely at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they spoke of familiar things. But before long, I felt myself growing pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears. The ringing became more distinct, and I talked more freely to rid myself of the feeling. But it continued and gained definition until at length I realized that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I now grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I rose and argued about trifles in a loud voice and with violent gesticulations, but the noise kept increasing. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor back and forth with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men. But it kept increasing, so what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and scraped it on the floorboards, but the noise arose over that and continually increased. It grew louder and louder. And still the men chatted pleasantly, and still they smiled. Was it possible they heard not? Almighty God, oh no! They heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my terror. This I thought, and this I still think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die. At heart, louder, louder, louder. Villains! I shouted. Dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks. Here, here, it is the beating of his hideous heart. Okay, that's the Telltale Heart. I hope you enjoyed my rendition, and if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, please do so below. Thank you. Goodbye.